340 paddler, blah, blah, blah.
Lean on me. Okay, I promised I wouldn't do that, and it happened anyway. Welcome back to 340 Paddler. Today we are talking about Outriggers, that insurance policy that we so desperately want on the 340, the way that we can balance a fast boat and 2 a.m. insurance. Let's get into it. So, you've gone out, you've bought yourself a cool new boat. Epic V10, V12, V26. That one's only about 3 inches wide. Stellar SEI, SEL, SEZ. That one's also about 3 inches thick. And you're wondering, how the heck am I going to get this cool new boat that only cost $4,000, quite a deal, down the river? Maybe you don't have a hot boat, but you're still a little nervous. Well, let's look at it. When we think of outriggers, a lot of people think of outrigger canoes. They look something like this. Fantastic if you tip to the left, because there's a big old outrigger, it's going to stop you. Really problematic if you tip the other way. It will mousetrap almost instantly, and this outrigger will snap over to that side, attempting to remove your cranium in the process. Oftentimes we see something like this, usually referred to as a gullwing or, dual outriggers. But how do we do this? What's a practical way of doing this without breaking the bank? And if you do want to do this, how do you do it? Well, first of all, let's look at the rules. Rule 21 of the MR340, any part of the craft, rudders, outriggers, etc., which will be below the waterline during any portion of the race must be on board from start to finish. What does this mean? This means that people in suits will show up and stare at your boat unless that outrigger is with you the whole race. It doesn't have to be on the boat. It doesn't have to be on the outside of the boat. You can jam it in the boat. It depends what you have. But at the end of the day, you don't want to break the rules. Otherwise, Mansker's minions will track you down. They know where you live. As I said, you are using an outrigger primarily for 2 a.m. insurance. There's a lot of stuff that can happen out there at 2 a.m. You don't want to have a 2 a.m. rummage sale due to hallucinations, or cats, or sleep deprivation. Any of these can cause a significant issue. It could be exhaustion. Your core is simply blown and you can't keep the boat upright. So, there's a number of different forms when it comes to an outrigger. We're going to start with the most basic and move from there. The simplest, most basic form is a swim noodle. Really, 2 swim noodles. And you see them here as I come in the 2012 340. And it looks like I've done outstandingly well. In reality, it was 78 hours and not so great. But leaving that aside, I did have these swim noodles. Let's walk you through how I did this. Cheaply, that's how I did it. So I took big old swim noodles. These are like the 3-4 inch wide with the hole in the middle swim noodles. Those, by the way, have a buoyancy of between 100 and 150 pounds for each of them. So you're really not going to tip over that far before it's going to catch you. And then what I did is I put industrial strength Velcro on the boat and on the outrigger. And then, because nothing sticks to swim noodles, just trust me, nothing sticks to swim noodles, unless you don't want it to, and then it will. I used 10-pound fishing line and just looped it around, because what that does is it holds the Velcro in place without interfering with the Velcro. The ends of the swim noodle were duct taped to hold the fishing line and the Velcro and everything in position so that it didn't fray and tear off during the race. How did I attach that to the boat? Well, not just the Velcro, but I tend to like backups whenever possible, so I used our second favorite tool on the 340, quick ties, to attach it to some deck fixtures that I had here, and then there were more up towards the front of the boat. Basically, these sat around 1/2 inch to 1 inch when I'm not tipping over above the waterline. Not a lot. It hits every wave that it comes across, but almost impossible to tip. Trust me, I hit 4 wing dikes with this. I did stupid things with this, and I didn't tip. Let's move on. You can use PVC. Home Depot has a lot of it. And they will sell you all that you want. And you can do something really handy like this. The downside is it's heavy. PVC is not the most lightweight material out there, but it does float. So 50-50. Sort of depends on what you're doing. But this also brings up a good point, which is by moving the wings further out from the boat, it adds to the stability. Something like this on a kayak or a canoe, you could probably stand up in the boat. I mean, there's wind resistance. You don't want to do that. But apart from that, you could stand up in the boat, and please don't, because hallucinations would be horrific under those circumstances. You could use PVC like this, and he just has an aluminum pole that runs across the front of the boat. It's attached with either adhesive or some people use suction cups, which work really well on gel coat. And then the PVC here, he's got a couple of tubes with a cap on it. Looks like a funnel that he just put a cap, blocked it off. So it looks like a torpedo. Paint him like a torpedo. That'd be fantastic for the 340. But each of these is full of air, so it probably has plenty of buoyancy to prevent him from tipping. And you'll notice if he wasn't tipped over towards us a little bit, that these stand well above the water. They're probably 5 to 6 inches above the water when he's level. This is great because that means the waves don't hit it. Now you can use foam and fiberglass. When you see the really fancy outriggers, that's what they're usually doing, is they're using pink insulation foam or blue insulation foam. You have to take the plastic off in between because those are usually coated with a sheet of plastic. Tear that off. And you can glue it together with something like Tight Bond, and then you can fiberglass it into a finished sealed product. It's going to be very light, very dense, and very, very strong. Almost impossible to sink. And you can do something simple like a single outrigger with a couple of poles attached, or you can do something more complex. This is done by JB, a member of the forums and a racer from Tennessee. And he created these out of foam and then made molds so that he could make something lighter in fiberglass. But really, the sky's the limit. The things you need to keep in mind are you need to have the outrigger. It needs to be buoyant. And you need to have a connection. That needs to be light and strong. You obviously don't want a pole that's going to bend as you lean into it. Now, the ultimate would be if you could get a Huki Gullwing, which are hard as hen's teeth to come across. I know where to get one or two, but most of them are quite expensive and attached to Hukis, which kind of defeats the purpose if you don't want to attach it to a Huki. If you do want to get one of these, I believe last time I looked it was around $1,000 to get one shipped from Hawaii. And then you would have to figure out how to attach it to your boat properly, and that's a whole lot of engineering that I'm not going to get into. But it's always an option. And the advantage here is they stay up above the water line until you need them. When you tip, then it catches you and you can tip back up. None of these are meant to sit in the water all the time. That would be pretty inefficient. So let's look at some considerations when you are putting something together. First of all, any outrigger setup will have drag. The drag is going to be directly related to the size of the outrigger. And that's not just the width. A very long, skinny outrigger can have a great deal of drag, just like a very short, fat outrigger can. It may be more efficient, but it's still going to have a great deal of drag. So keep that in mind. Every time that outrigger's in the water, it's going to slow you down. Now, maybe that's worth it. And to be honest, if I was doing my first 340 and I didn't know what to expect night 2 and night 3, that might be worth it. There's going to be a weight consideration. You're going to be hauling this thing. Remember Rule 21, you need to have it in the boat. You're going to be carrying this thing with you. So whatever you do, make it light. That's why I use swim noodles. I can put them in the boat with almost no weight penalty. In fact, I can set it up so that they can Velcro on and I'm carrying the quick ties and the noodles themselves are in the front hatch. They weigh nothing. It makes it a lot easier. But if you do something more complex with PVC and everything else, there you might run into a weight issue. Again, Is it worth it? Well, it depends on what you're trying to do and what your concerns are. Then there's wind resistance. Just like there's drag in the water, there's going to be drag if you hit a headwind. I guarantee you on the 340, you will hit a headwind. It will probably be around Rocheport. We do it intentionally. It's a giant fan. So wind resistance becomes an issue. This is usually the cross members to the Gullwing or the Outrigger or whatever it is that you're using. It's additional stuff that's out there in the path of the wind. So it will slow you down that way. Now, that may not be a big concern for you. But if it is, well, keep it in mind. Use thin connections to the Outriggers, or as thin as you reasonably can. You can make them more aerodynamic. You can make them lifting surfaces and just kind of fly above the water, sort of like Joe Mann. Ultimately, we just want to get you to the end of the race and get you there safely, and Outriggers may be the perfect way for you to do that. With that in mind, this is 340 Paddler, hoping that you keep your paddle in the water.